Thank you so much, and thank you to you for being here as well. I'm glad to be able to be here and to be asked or to be given the task of giving out the keynote address. The first thing I'd like to do is to put out a disclaimer that as a scholar, as an academic, I am bound to be controversial. And I am quite okay with that. And so accept me as such, as being controversial as I am. I was invited somewhere and I was asked to talk about the definition of what civic engagement is. And my opening statement was, we actually should not be engaging in the business of defining. I think we should stay with our definition. And the whole audience was like, so what did we invite you to do? But that's our task, to push boundaries, to try and move us to innovative thinking and ways in which we can find solutions to our society. This week marks the 12th annual Global Entrepreneurship Week, and the 67 CEOs Foundation marks its third. The theme for this week's forum is Advancing Market Access. And the purpose of the theme is to look at how small, medium, and micro enterprises can respond creatively, not that word, and profitably to the rising innovations in consumer choices, in markets, and in a lot of other spaces which are taking place. These innovations are taking place around the world. In a more sophisticated language, these disruptive innovations have been referred to as the fourth industrial revolution. The third industrial revolution was brought about, so the one preceding the current, was brought about by digital technologies, your TVs and so on, and inclusive of mobile phones and the internet, basic internet. And what preceded that, the second industrial revolution, refers to the expansion of steel, oil, and electricity technologies, which were responsible for mass production. And then the first one, where scientists trace the origin of these revolutions that have moved in waves, or the first industrial revolution was shaped by iron and textile industries along with the development of the steam engine. The past three waves of technological revolution have increased productivity and efficiency. There's no question of the fact that internet and mobile phones have increased efficiency so that we don't have to send letters to ask clients what they actually need for us to start processing. You simply text them or you call them, they send you information on WhatsApp, you're able to Snapchat, and all that kind of technologies that have increased efficiency, saved time, and cost at the same time. So we have seen an increase of productivity and efficiency, and the world has become a global village under the last three industrial revolutions. This is not just on an individual basis, but we've seen nations rise, such as China, India, Singapore, South Korea, Israel, and others, who have transformed from poverty and underdevelopment in just 40 years, which scientists refer to as a generation. So if you're over 40 years, you're already gone beyond your generation. That is what this means. But in other words, what I am saying is that in just one generation, we've seen such a rise of nations because of industrial revolution. But the consequences of industrial revolution have not been always positive. Under technological advancement, global inequalities have increased due to what one scholar known as Raul Prebisch, a South American or Argentinian academic in the 1950s, they talked about what they refer to as diminishing terms of trade, by which they meant that as developed countries employ technological advances to exploit natural resources, they do so, or they exploit natural resources from developing countries. And what happens then is that the demand for manufactured goods increases. And maybe just an anecdote, a couple of years ago, I was involved in a project in Richards Bay, and there was a cooperative of women who were producing essential oils. And as they farmed, they did not have the technologies to distill and then to process. Now, essential oils, as you know, the final product could be your perfumes or pesticides and so on. And what we had was a French company that would buy the primary products. It would then distill and ship the distilled version of the essential oils to France, to Paris, process those into into perfumes. And then, of course, as you know, some of you who are especially middle classes, if you have to buy the French perfumes in our stores, they're extremely expensive. But most of those, the primary products are actually right here and in Africa and in South Africa, by and large. But for the women who were doing the farming of the primary products of essential oils, they actually cannot afford to buy those perfumes. And that's a good example of how a manufactured product, because of technologies, the benefits accrue to the person who owns the technology and the primary producers, which on a global scale happen to be most developing countries. They go home with nothing. During the first and the second industrial revolution, agriculture and manufacturing were the dominant sectors of the economy, global economy, as I said. And under the third and now fourth industrial revolution, structural shifts have taken place. And I have said that one of the most visible changes has been the declining of the manufacturing sector globally and in South Africa. Just to give you some statistics, from 1994 to date, the manufacturing sector has shrunk by half. So some of you who are already in the manufacturing sector, the times are tough. Not just because South Africa's economy is suffering, but because there are global shifts happening because of the fourth industrial revolution. And agriculture, on its part, in the 1960s, it contributed about, in South Africa, 9.1% of GDP. And fast forward to 2013, the contribution of agriculture to our GDP here is mere 2.2%. We can argue and say that, look, we are having issues with land, we're having issues with climate change, or we are not producing enough. But the reality is that there are structural shifts that are taking place, not because of things that are within our control, but because of the fourth industrial revolution, where the economy is moving towards the services sector. Some countries like Rwanda and Kenya and India, they've actually shifted almost entirely into a services sector-driven economies. And the traditional logic of economists have been you grow from agriculture to manufacturing to services. But Rwanda, Kenya, India, they've actually skipped the manufacturing straight into the services. And there are serious implications of that. I don't have the time to talk about that. But it's simply, my point here is that there are shifts that are taking place, and we need to be aware of them as small enterprises. The most pressing negative impact of the past three industrial revolutions has been social unrest, climate change, and environmental-related diseases. The fourth industrial revolution, however, finds us with the benefit of history. So what we did not do in the first three industrial revolutions, we did not have the foresight of the negative consequences of these revolutions. We simply went with the motions of innovations and so on. We have a benefit in the fourth industrial revolution in that we are able to, before we really get into the depths of it, to look at the possible negative impacts. We begin to prepare and we begin to see ways in which we can respond to them. Talking still more about the negative consequences of the fourth industrial revolution, about a year ago, I wrote an article to the City Press, and I cited the following facts. That according to the 2018 Ibrahim Index of African Governance, I argued that while African economies are growing, they are not translating to sustainable economic opportunities. Those of you aware of Africa's GDP, we are growing at a continental average of about 3.7%. But in most cases, we've seen poverty increasing, inequality increasing, and yet GDP growth looks really good on paper and in theory. As technology improves, I argued, advanced economies are able to retain the savings derived from technologies, while in our part as developed nations, we stay poor. Through this asymmetric system, most of the benefits of technology and international trade accrue to advanced nations. What I'd like to suggest further is that the fourth industrial revolution is likely to increase GDP growth. This is where the future is likely to be, and I hope that we can sit and discuss about this a couple of years to come. That because of the fourth industrial revolution, because of the technologies and the innovations that are taking place, what's likely to happen is that you're likely to have rising GDP because there is increasing productivity, and yet our employment or unemployment remains high, inequalities remain high and poverty levels remain high. For the simple purpose that although our GDP numbers are looking good, what is producing is actually not human beings, but it's robotics and machines and so on, while people are being laid off by the machines themselves. And so when you look at GDP as a small business, my point to you is that don't get swayed by whether the GDP is really high or low. It has its place in economic arguments, but that should not move you as an entrepreneur to suggest that if GDP is high or it's low, then that's going to affect your business in any significant way. It is in the future, GDP is going to be driven largely by technologies, and the way to respond or to capture the opportunities for us to make sure that we respond to those changes. If we do not respond proactively and innovatively to these changes experienced by developing countries, the effect of the fourth industrial revolution will be more devastating to you as small businesses, to us as developing nations. Let me now turn to ways in which we can harness the opportunities through creating and refashioning market access for small enterprises as means to employment creation. You will know that in South Africa there is a new gazetted definition of SMMEs, which was gazetted on the 12th of October last year, 2018. And I think I won't belabor the point, but most of you are aware of the new definition. Previously we had small, medium, micro enterprises, and what we've done now, we've removed the very small category in the new definition. We've eliminated gross asset value as a proxy for small businesses. We've also revised the turnover value to account for inflation, and we've also emphasized sectoral differentiation in definition. So if you look at the gazetted information, you will clearly see the sectoral distribution. I'm moving towards the finish, but I want to indicate some specific challenges that we will have to confront and to grapple with. And after that, I will then move to finally the specific ways in which small businesses can take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution in order to take advantage of or to access markets in a much more aggressive and advanced way. First, the problem or the challenges that we face. At the core of market access is a philosophical question of whether individuals are born entrepreneurs or whether they are made so. To blame circumstances or to blame government is mostly a practice, and I really would like you to hear this clearly. I suspect I might be controversial here, but the people who you hear them blaming government and everybody else, those are the made entrepreneurs. Those are not the born entrepreneurs. And there is a serious problem in our society today on the difference between the two. And we wonder why businesses are not succeeding. And I hold the view that suitable market and government systems, they exist to offer the support of already the born entrepreneurs. I don't believe that entrepreneurs are made. I believe that they are born. They will survive under harsh conditions, and government comes along and large businesses come along and policies come along. They simply just give them that little kick that they need, but they are there out in the cold fighting and trying to make something out of their lives. That's what I believe entrepreneurship is about. The second problem is that the establishment of special economic zones by government, I think that is a welcome move by government, but I don't think that SEZs have focused on technology innovations enough. Most of the SEZs, I've worked with some of them in Northwest and elsewhere, they have tended to really just focus on providing the basic services that you need, and once you exit, then there's not much innovation taking place. And I am critical over the lack of innovation, technological innovation in SEZs. Thirdly, historically, government incubation programs have not been successful. Regardless of how we twist the data, the fact of the matter is that all the small enterprises that are incubated by CEDA, 75% of them do not succeed. There's a problem with it. And I'm not laying the problem right on the doorstep of CEDA, but I'm also suggesting that there's a problem when entrepreneurs load themselves onto a system because they have seen an opportunity, but they are not really born entrepreneurs. The problem is on both sides in my argument. Number 4, South African SMMEs are generally national in their outlook. South African entrepreneurs, especially small enterprises, you have no idea how much opportunities lie right across the border and outside in the African market. There lies an opportunity for the South African entrepreneurs. And I want to move on now to my last section, by which I talk to the ways in which we should expand market access. Number one, small businesses need to gain awareness of the standards they need to comply with how to implement them. Large companies like Exaro and others could guide SMMEs on product standardization principles and so on. But we need to understand the benchmarks, the quality aspects of our products and of global benchmarks. Number two, SMMEs should seek to understand and align with market structure, pricing structure, and contractual agreements. The pricing issue is a major problem. You get some small enterprises, you give them the same work, they give you totally different quotations. And it's something that small businesses could be supported to try and ensure that they fit into the market pricing, they know how to price their products, and to be competitive. Number three, large companies should provide opportunities to SMMEs to insert themselves into the value chains of these large firms. Next, efficiency of payments. It looks like a trivial issue, but payments by large companies to small enterprises, it is a major problem, whether government or businesses themselves. When it short circuits cash flow, what it actually does, you lock that SMME to become your client forever. They can't go to any other client because they have no cash flow. Now, the relationship you have with them is a relationship of mercy. You're simply merciful to them because if they leave you, they're going out in the cold. So you're just merciful, but there is no business relationship taking place there. SMMEs should be aware of new trends and best practices. So you need to look out for the latest trends that are being produced in the market. I see the program director is stretching, telling me to sit down now. I am 3 points away, I promise. SMMEs should focus on customization and personalization of consumer services. Often we tend to see our clients as simply as clients, but we need to be able to go further to develop personal relationships where we customize. We know that if you call me to put up your DSTV on a Saturday morning, I can actually respond. Large companies don't do that. They will tell you, no, we work on, but a lot of SMMEs, they function like large businesses. You call them on a Saturday morning, they'll tell you we don't work on Saturdays, we'll come on Monday. But we need to be able to customize our services and products if we want to be competitive. Thank you so much, Program Director.